Good morning, guys. Welcome to Island Tea right here in Win Media SKN, where Jade is freezing herself.
I am literally
Jade, turn on
freezing.
the AC.
Yeah, turn it on, my friend.
Okay, lock it out so long. I do, apply.
Thanks.
But guys, in studio and hopefully not as cold and chilly, is a friend of the show. He's been here before, and I know a lot of you are looking forward to this conversation. In studio, we have with us candidate for constituency number 3 for the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, Konris Maynard. Konris, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. You know, I'm recovering from a little. I don't know what it is. It's a Sahara dust.
You don't start wrong.
Sahara dust. We're going with that.
Yeah, okay, let's go with that. That's a safer one.
Yes.
Right? Safer one.
But I'm gonna tell you, and if you know what I'm seeing. I seen a train here, Jade.
What's that?
When his comrade was here, what did be a few weeks ago, he walked in the studio. I said, "Bye, you look fresh, bye. Can we come in here? Same thing. Something good out of the Labour Party here.
Absolutely.
Something good out of the Labour Party.
Absolutely. Fresh. That's a good one. Fresh.
Yeah, man.
I feel like they've had the least amount of stress thus far, so they should look as fresh as possible.
They're having a good time, man.
So you then admit that some people are in fact under stress.
I mean, given the current climate, I'm pretty sure that you can find at least 2 stressed out people currently. Be it some of them may be unemployed at the current time, but stress no less.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Stress around, direct. And I think that it has moved from the political class, and I believe it is actually affecting the electorate. And I think that I keep talking about the fact that just moving around, there does seem to be a sense of some anxiety.
You're a little bit away from the mic.
Oh, sorry. There does seem to feel like a bit of anxiety, just among the general public, as it relates to the present political situation. How would you just briefly describe where we are at politically?
Right. Well, thanks, Azem. We're not in a good place politically as a nation, right? Where we are, these are unprecedented times. I cannot recall in our history or in the immediate history of any of our neighbors that we have a situation where you have a prime minister who fired more than half of his cabinet in response to them bringing a motion of no confidence against him. So we're in unprecedented times. We're also in unprecedented times because what that means is that anyone who might have been there to pay attention as to what is happening in our government, they're not there. So you have effectively created, people run from this word, but between the dissolution of parliament and the next election, you effectively have a dictatorship because there's nobody who is going to be able to check what the prime minister is doing. Nobody. So we must not take that lightly. And perhaps after the upcoming elections, as we go into things like constitutional reform, we need to evaluate if those are things we need to protect ourselves against during the transition of governments. What can happen if someone is put in a particular corner that the prime minister is put? Are there safeguards to ensure that there is not a window of darkness, that anything and everything can be done?
Well, before you even continue, because you've gone down a path that I have found very interesting as I've been given the opportunity to speak to representatives within the political space. And that is the path where we see legislation, amendments to the Constitution, reforms to our laws, etc., that safeguard against what we now know is possible. It seems as though there has been a reluctance by some within the political class to, one, admit that that is what is necessary, or perhaps they just have a different view. Whereas I believe that, yes, we would hope that the persons that we elect and put into these positions are righteous and honorable men, and these things would not be
And
necessary.
women.
However, I don't think that we should leave the future up to these perhaps and maybes and hopefullys, right? As a member of the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, do you believe that we have to legislate to guard against certain types of behaviors among the political class? And if so, what are some of those amendments that you see as being necessary at this particular time?
Right, that's a very good question, Azem. And the reality is we are still a young democracy. And so there is a lot still we have to do. Oftentimes when you prepare something, you write something, a piece of legislation or a constitution, there are some things you may not consider because of the norms of the time, that it is respectful not to do something, and you did not think you have to legislate that you must not take these abuses. But as time goes along, you would realize that we always have to shape or place guardrails because when people are in particular corners of their lives, we have found that they will do anything sometimes to survive. Now, so it is an ongoing process, and so we must deal with it head on. And that is why I said we need to look at situations like this, where at any time through an administration, there is always some level of accountability, and not that you have to go and clean up. And so that goes right into some legislation, for instance, that was passed almost 10 years ago now, in 2013 into 2014, thereabout, the Integrity in Public Life legislation. That is a start. And that allows, for instance, to have a commission that can investigate and ensure that our public officials are abiding to the letter of law and having the highest moral standards. This government, who is in now, or well, the I guess outgoing government, because it's not the same government anymore, because it's now dismantled, went in on that platform that we are going to make these things a reality. We are now 7 years out from that. Ironically, I think we just had some sort of integrity council discussion right here in St. Kitts, and there has been nothing activated as it pertains to that. So there are still no effective checks on what our elected officials and public officials are doing. And we are saying that, no, we have been enlightened, we expect this, and we are going to move in that direction. And so in the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, we did not wait for that to be enacted or to be enforced. We went within ourselves and formed or instituted what we call the Code of Ethical Conduct, which is a guideline to keep candidates within checks and balances. And if we were to fall outside of those, we will be seeing the door. So we are giving that commitment that we are serious about this, because we are growing as a democracy, and there are just some basic things that need to happen. It cannot just be talk to get into office, and the electorate must be particularly strong on a group of politicians who gave strong commitments on something like this and have failed to even institute one iota or one piece or one sentence of it, perhaps because they have realized that their interests would be at stake and their ultimate goals will be revealed to the public. And so we must pay attention to that as well. Those who are really interested in accountability will get it done, because they will feel and know that they have nothing to hide. But those who have other intents on what they want to do while serving the public will do everything in their power for it not to happen. And we have seen that happen over the past 7 years.
Yeah, I don't believe that there's anything wrong with legislating our expectations, as opposed to it being just something that is floating in the ether. something that is just around, this is convention. This is what is expected, and I do believe that if these are the expectations, we'll let it be known that these are the expectations and put things in place to ensure that the expectations are adhered to. So happy to hear that is the thought of the Labour Party. But we are now deeply and squarely in campaign season. The last election, you were not as successful as I know you would have hoped to be.
Yes.
But just being around you, right? For years, I've known you for quite some time. I have seen you in competition mode. I know that you're a man who looks at the rule book, who looks at the outcome, who does his assessments, his postmortems. What do you think would have been some of the major factors that contributed to the previous outcome, and how do you intend to remedy those in this campaign moving forward?
Right. Well, first, I like what you said there about looking at analyzing the situation, because you are right. In competition, you have to take time to understand what the rules are, what your competition is, and what your expectations. And so, obviously, over the past couple of months, years, we've done that analysis. And I want to say that we are in a position to win back constituency number 3.
But you don't say that with confidence, Jay.
And
Well, I mean,
absolutely. And
don't
we are
expect
going
anything
to do all that we need to do within those boundaries of the rules, right, to win back number 3. And I am not coming from a place of not having this type of experience already. You know, I remember losing, yes, I remember losing a crown before in terms of in soccer and determining that I'm going to get it back. I remember, all that was said when I was, for instance, I won in St. Kitts, a couple crowns, but I didn't win in Anguilla.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Right, you were there. And so that year, I said, no, I'm going to win in Anguilla. I went down, I didn't take the flight that the organizers set up. I went down earlier. I evaluated the environment. I went to the Calypso shows there. I felt what was happening on the ground, and I crafted a strategy to win. So I want people who are listening in constituency number 3 and the nation to understand that we have crafted a strategy to win back number 3. But looking at what has transpired, there were a multitude of factors. And some analysis would have to be done further just to quantify the amount of effort that the government had placed in constituency number 3. It was multi-pronged. And even now, as I canvass over the past couple of months, persons and so on, for the amount of resources that were placed within constituency number 3, from the government level right down to on the street, those big things that are being delivered to people. It's really amazing that the loss was only so small based on the amount of resources that were put in that constituency. And I heard a figure the other day, someone did an analysis, and it was, when you look at the government's hand, the political hands and so on, it is in the millions and millions of dollars. But I have been always one who never looks for someone to blame. I think that that's a distraction. I view life like this. If Azem sees me going down the road,
I can hear you.
and puts a stumbling block in my way, if I trip, it is not because Azem put it there. It is because I didn't step high enough over it. So regardless of all that the government would have done, legal and illegal, I view it as whatever they did, I simply did not do enough to overcome it. And so this time around, I'm going to do more in order to overcome what they have to do and use whatever currency I have to do that. One of the important things is we have to always make sure we are in tune with the people. We have to be among the people, hear what they're saying. And I can report that the constituency is incredibly disappointed with the representation that they have. Incredibly disappointed. I am actually, in some instances, surprised at the depth of disappointment. And that is why I'm not going to give up, because the crown for me is not just about winning the constituency, but I got into this for a purpose, to serve the people and to create opportunity for my community. And that is the crown I'm looking for. I'm looking for that day when I can show that we were able to use the government and the government resources to move people from one place to the next. So we've done the analysis. We are working on it, and we are confident that we can win, and we will win back constituency number 3.
I mean, that's amazing, Konris, to hear you say that, you have been in touch with the people, you have been, analyzing what has transpired, if before, during, and after the last election. As someone who is aiming to...
You went into politics?
Me?
I thought you said, as you're going to say, as someone who is aiming to go into politics myself.
No.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
No.
I said, what is this?
I don't.
I didn't know that.
No. I think you have to know your. You have to know your. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, for every time that I have PTSD. Every time that door opens,
you
start another letter coming in.
You start another letter coming in, man. He good, man.
I am not aware that there are any letters out there circulating for me.
That's what the last person said, and I got one.
Oh, boy.
Well, I'll keep my eye open then.
But Konris, what I'm saying is, you've done the analysis, and you are saying that you have met with the people, you've been around the community, and also that your aim is to then move the people of that community and the community as a whole forward and upwards, right?
Yes.
Based on what you have learned, based on your interactions, what are the pressing issues within the community? The constituency number 3, which stretches from what we now call the village.
Yes.
All the way down to, is it Boyd's?
Yes, to Points.
To Points. Okay.
Palmetto Point.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, I mean, yes, we know some of the critical issues that are facing folks. There are a lot. One critical one, of course, is housing. That is always a major issue for the people of the constituency. Although the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party presided over what was or is the greatest housing revolution the country has seen, building close to 5,000 homes over its last 20 years in government, there is still a lot of need. And everywhere I go, my heart is really softened by some of the conditions that some persons still have to endure. Just last night, I was in a community, and there's a family in an area, and each multiple of their houses that are old and so on have leaking roofs. There was one young lady, for instance, who could not stay in the house any longer and has to go somewhere away from her family just because they don't have the resources to be able to fix their homes. They are not being given an opportunity to get their own homes. They don't have the capital to go to the bank, for instance, and get a loan to build a house. So there is a tremendous need still for housing in the constituency. And so we give a commitment that once again, we will preside over another housing revolution, but we're going to expand it this time, not just affordable homes, but we are going to bring in, for instance, the middle range, the middle income type homes, that persons who may just overqualify for an affordable home but still struggle to go to the bank because of student loans or some business they're working on, or or some other things in their life that just prevents them from there. So they're in this middle spot where they have to always be renting. We're saying that as the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, we have to focus on that group of persons as well. And also for the young men, for instance, because traditionally, obviously, in a society where you have a large percentage of the households being led by women, when you have a young woman who has 3-4 children, and then you have a single man and you have one house to distribute, where does that house go? You know, traditionally you may want to empower the young lady because she is nurturing young ones, but then what about the young men? And so what we're saying, for instance, especially in my constituency and around the country, we're going to have something what we are effectively going to call the bundle of materials. We're going to say, look, you're young, you're strong, you're probably maybe in construction, you have friends, father, uncle, etc., who could assist you in building. So we will provide you with the bundle of materials so that your cost is only based on the reduced price, the tax concession price of the materials, and we guide you in the process. So we provide you with the plans, we provide you with all the building board approvals, you go step by step, you get the materials for your foundation, you build the foundation, that gets checked off and so on. And so that the young men can be part of building their own, right, and being affordable for them as well. So while we are building out our housing stock for the affordable homes and the middle income homes, we can also have young men engaged in empowering themselves through home ownership as well. So home ownership is critical. Obviously, especially after the pandemic, job creation is another biggie. We have too many young persons who are not working or in a particular job that there is no prospect for growth. And so we have to expand on a number of areas, including agriculture. There are sections of the constituency that are into farming, especially on the western side of the constituency, the Boyd's West Farm Points area. And we have a lot of persons who are interested in farming, but they're not getting the opportunities, one, to be able to access the lands to farming. Two, they're also not getting the training or the funding or the expertise to assist them in that. And so we are saying no. The pandemic has taught us that there is an increasing need for us to become more food secure or to increase our food security. And how we are going to do that is to empower our nationals to be part of the agricultural industry. So that is going to be another major focus. And then in terms of the development of the people, West Bastia is a proud footballing community.
Right.
We have, some may argue, the best team ever.
I mean,
some may argue that, and they will have very good grounds to say that the Village Superstars is, well, not. This is a fact that it's one of the best teams ever.
One of the best.
Yes, that's not in dispute. But we do not yet have something that we can call our own as a sporting facility. We can't host a home game, for instance. Right. And so, without a doubt, that is a major commitment of mine. And I'm not just saying it because into politics. I've been involved in the club for quite some time. Right. And when I was there, just being an ordinary member of the club, I had resurfaced the entire Patsy Allers play field. The grass was like, those who can remember, was like over on the golf course. Right. Because I do have a passion for that. I mean, God didn't bless me with the skill of playing football. But
couldn't give you all, man. You couldn't give you all.
Well, good point. Good point, Carla. But I have a passion for football, and I do believe that we can go places in our football. So sport development is going to be very critical as well. So the constituency can be rest assured that we will have a multi-purpose sporting facility when Konris Maynard becomes a representative in government. And another important part of the sports development is, I was telling some young persons, there's no one on earth who can convince me that because Lionel Messi was born in Argentina, or Ronaldo in Portugal, right, or the other Ronaldo, sometimes we call it the real Ronaldo, born in Brazil, that somehow they're born with more talent. Nobody can convince me of that. But what is for real is that their opportunity or their pathway to success, there's a pathway that exists for them.
Right.
They have the resources, they have the access to what is needed to hone any potential they have. Talents in St. Kitts and Nevis don't necessarily have access, do not have access to that type of resource pool. And so we are given a commitment as the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party to establish a professional sporting academy that when we identify someone at the age of 5, age of 6, there's a program that guides them through their primary school years. And at age 12, they will then graduate to this academy that will train them how to be professional athletes, whether it is football, cricket, athletics, whichever the sport.
Whichever discipline, right?
Discipline it is. And so we give that commitment because we believe, and I am convinced, that we are not short on talent. Because with raw talent, look at where we have reached. You have Kim Collins, you have Keith Kayambo Gomes, you have others, Atiba,
right.
Harris, and so on, who have, they started off with very little compared to a Messi when he was identified, went into the Barca Academy and was honed by professionals. And so we are going to make that investment. So those are some of the things. I mean, as I said, could go on and on. Education is also a very important one in the constituency because we are affected by the situation of the Bastia High School. So we're going to ensure that we have a Bastia High School. That really hurts my heart, having gone to the Bastia High School to see how we have allowed politics to prevent an entire generation, 2 generations of students from ever understanding what it was like to have a wholesome high school education. That is a sin that we need to correct.
Repent.
Definitely, right? And then within the community, of course, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of the beautification of our community, establishing and maintaining the green areas. There are a lot of children, for instance, in camps that don't have anywhere to play. That is part of a healthy development of a society and a country. We must promote that type of healthy living through physical activity, and we are going to make the green spaces and parks available for that. So those are some, and as we go, we could talk about some more.
Jade?
Well, I know since election is literally around the corner, one of the big issues for a lot of people has always been the overseas voters. And especially since we live in a society where our constituency system is what we use. What is your take on having overseas voters be an essential part of this election?
Right. So oftentimes we like to bunch everything overseas voters. Well, at one point I was an overseas voter. I went to university. Is there a saying or a thinking that because I was out to university, I should not vote? What about the overseas voter who has a business in Miami, providing services to St. Kitts? Is that overseas voter because they're out there not allowed to participate? What about overseas voters who work on behalf of our government and on behalf of our people? What about our overseas voters like me, for instance, who worked for a regional company who placed me in another country, but I came back here and everything I have, all my investments are here. So oftentimes by saying, bunching everything, overseas voters, should we have overseas voters or not? Well, firstly, we must always try to protect the right of persons to be a part of the process, the electoral process, right? That is something people have died for. I have no objection to ensuring that there is no abuse of that. And I think that that's where the discussion needs to go. Ensure that those who have a stake in our country are able to participate in the process, and those who do not, don't. I did some analysis for the developed countries in this world, and there is no push in any developed nation that I'm aware of to minimize the number of people who vote. They have made it easier for their expats to participate in the process, even vote where they presently live, even though they do not live in the country. Canada has expanded it. The UK has expanded it. The United States has expanded it. And so when we have these discussions, let us have it in a wholesome view, not because we're trying to achieve a specific political agenda, but we're trying to identify, well, what is the grain? What is the grain of where the world is?
Not only that, what is the spirit?
And the
that
spirit.
we're trying to foster through our elections and who we're trying to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially when we have a society like ours that depends so heavily on our expats sending back remittances to St. Kitts and Nevis. It is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so they have to be part of the process. And any attempt to disenfranchise them must be seen for what it is. That perhaps they don't like me, so I want to keep them out. But as soon as maybe they start to like me again, I'll put them back in.
Let them come.
Right? So that is the general position. So we welcome and we encourage always for persons to be part of the process.
I agree. And in the past, we've also seen that another big side of this discussion has been the issue of the... Well, I can't speak to it because it has never happened to me, but it has been alleged that these political parties often pay for the voters to come in themselves. Do you think that is a practice that we should continue if that is a practice that has been happening?
Right. So, I often, again, wonder about this. I am going to pay on election day, of course, to have a bus to pick up the elderly to go to vote. Should I ask the elderly to pay me or to find their own way to the polls? So not because my elderly now is living in New York, it now becomes a crime because they're living in New York. So again, we have to pay attention to these types of discussions and whether it is going away from what we should be focusing on. Because I am quite aware that persons, political parties who have organized for voters to go to the polls and so on, there is no obligation on those persons to vote for who brought them there. And in fact, there has been many instances where people are brought by political parties and they openly go and vote against the political party that was seen to bring them in. So I don't know if that discussion is how should I say it, is really focusing on what we need to focus on. As an engineer, often when we're looking at things, we look at it on the smaller scale and we look at it on the bigger scale, because sometimes when it's on the bigger scale, you actually scale, well, what's going on here? But then what are we to do if I have a bunch of voters who live in a part of the constituency? I should tell them, go and pay and catch a bus?
Well, that's something for them to think about. So recently, the People's Action Movement has launched their new candidate in your constituency, of course. Do you think that will have an effect on your candidacy in the upcoming election?
That's a good question. I should start by saying that the People's Action Movement has effectively abandoned the constituency over the past 12 years or thereabout. The last time they had a candidate there was in 2010. And they allowed Timothy Harris to persuade them that they should not have any presence in the constituency. That is something that the party has to evaluate whether or not that was a good decision. However, we are very confident that the voters who have made up their mind to support us in the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party will stay, with the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. And I think there are others who have to concern themselves about what it means for them for the PAM candidate to be announced in the constituency. At the same time, I want to reach out to all persons in the constituency who support all types of political parties, in understanding that we in the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party believe that we are in a position to form a stable government, and that support for Konris Maynard and the Labour Party will get you a stable government that can do the business of the people for the next 5 years and not have to worry about crumbling after 2 years. And they must know that we in the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, and Konris Maynard in particular, I think I sang it in one of my songs, I have PAM and Labour fans, and all of them will be treated the same way, right? Because I am vying to be the representative of constituency number 3, not of the Labour people of constituency number 3. And so, although there is now a PAM candidate, remember that we have always been there representing on your behalf, and you must give us strong consideration. And I'm, asking that they consider giving me their vote to ensure that they have a stable representation and a stable government.
Just so you're aware, the guest Konris, he has agreed to, hear some of your comments, concerns, or questions as we move forward. So feel free to join the conversation as you see fit. Now, Konris.
Yes, sir. Sound like a big question, boy.
What it is we just talk a lot about certain things. I think there are things that people tend to not fully address or address in a real way. But I have heard, and I think that to some extent you may have even alluded to it here this morning, about the role that money plays in campaigns and in the outcome of elections.
Right.
Is that a concern of yours and the Labour Party? And if so, what are those concerns?
Absolutely. We are, and I am, a strong advocate for campaign financing legislation. I want, at the end of the day, when the electorate votes, that they make an informed decision on their prospects for the future, not on some small-term or short-term gratification that will disappear in an instant. And so we are strong for campaign finance legislation because that will then help to reflect more of the true sentiment of the people in the constituency. We have to, and I feel, understand that our vote is powerful. Azem, for instance, whom, let's say Azem is a millionaire.
Hopefully.
Right.
Soon.
And Jade is maybe 1,000-year.
That sounds correct.
Right. Both of you, your ex is worth the exact same thing.
Really, Jade?
I mean, some people would disagree, but yeah.
No man. One X, one vote.
That's what I'm saying. Your ex is worth the same as her ex. And we must always remember that we must not allow anybody to devalue our ex, because an ex certainly can't cost $500.
Right.
When that cannot sustain you or improve your living condition.
Until the next time you ask to drop another X.
Right. So we have to value our ex. We have to remember the collective power of our exes. I keep telling folks, if politicians understand that that group of 100 people are only making a decision on his or her past performance, or his or her policies, or his or her promises, then that politician will do everything in his or her power to make sure that his performance, her performance, or his policies or her policies will excite those 100 voters.
Right.
The benefit of that is what the people will get. You will get someone who is now focused on performance. But if those 100 people have said, okay, we just want $500, Well, why does the politician have to perform?
Right. Give you what
Why?
you want and move on.
And wait until the next time. And so we've seen a lot of that, for instance, in the constituency. A lot of instant gratification before the last election, but then disappearance thereafter. Absence. Because there's this thinking that I can come today and do the very same thing. X and our collective X's are powerful. When we decide as a people we're going in a particular direction, it doesn't matter what a government or a politician brings. We're saying we're sticking together. You have not performed. We're going to go in the next direction. And so, yes, we are concerned about that, but we are going to have to go further with our integrity agenda and look at campaign financing legislation. I've looked at some around the globe in Singapore, even in close by Jamaica and so on. And we have to get there. It is imperative to ensure that the people are getting the government or the choices of members of parliament that are for their best interests.
Well, Land Konris, a lot of times when we start talking about campaign financing, we look at it from the angle that you just touched squarely, right? A lot of times, though, we do not speak about the inference that some of the money that is spent on campaign also goes to candidates. And how does that play into the entire political system? Is that something that is expected? Bear in mind, I've had conversations with people in private about these types of things. They say, well, if you want a man go run and the man lose, then what he got?
Right.
You understand? And well, they give him 4 million. He used to for the campaign 2 in case anything. You understand? Is this something that again, just ask you straight up as a candidate? Is something that happen? And if it happens, should it? And how do we navigate that those occurrences to ensure the integrity of the entire electoral process?
Right. Very, very good question. I'm glad you asked that, because when you started, I was gonna carry it there. So let me just say very clearly, I have never received a single personal dollar for my well-being from politics or from a political party. Never. Right? That is something that I find very interesting over the years, because I have heard, I'm sure you have heard the egregious figures. You just called 4 million. When I was coming to be a candidate, I heard it was 2 million. When I got here, it was 3. By the time I settled in, it was 4, and it went all the way up to 5. Right?
As my friend, I hope there's some truth, but you're telling me not. So.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, that is a good point in terms of whether that should be happening and so on. One of the things within the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party that we do as part of the process, we have to declare what our financial position is, such that we are not open, or persons are not open to undue influence in any way. We want to make sure that people are stable and not bankrupt. So talking from my own perspective, that is not something that I have received or that I can verify happens in other cases. But it's sometimes disheartening. Why? I remember as a young man, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California, I learned that he took $1 for his salary because obviously he was wealthy. He didn't require a salary. And I thought to myself then, I would love to be in a position like that, where I don't have to take any money for politics, because the reality is, if it is you're getting in politics to make money, you're in the wrong business, right? Unless you plan to do things that are against the law. And so even in my own personal situation, when I became the member of parliament for St. Christopher III, the West Basia, between 2015 and 2020, my wife and I, we have our own businesses, and we made a determination that at that point, we can give back my entire salary to the constituency. So for 5 years, I gave back my entire salary to the constituency of constituency number 3 to empower people, to assist in sponsorships, to do community projects, to keep the office functional and accessible to persons, etc., because that was not my immediate need. You know, I remember some years ago in speaking with Dr. Douglas, sometime before I became a candidate, I impressed upon him that I never want to have politics as a means of income. I don't. My focus here is to assist and provide opportunities. Use the position, the experiences that I've had, the opportunities that I have been exposed to make opportunities available for others. And so we need to have a discussion about that, because you've raised a very important point. Well, what about Azem Bailey, who is working, let's say, at Eastern Caribbean Central Bank for a good salary, and maybe the policy of the bank is that he cannot be out on a campaign trail? What happens to him if you ask him to go into elective politics? That is a discussion we need to have. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with a situation like that? Is it that we're going to require everybody to be independent themselves? So it is worth having a discussion in terms of how you deal with that. But as for me, I can say very boldly, without any fear of contradiction, that I have never received a single dollar from me personally to my personal use.
All right.
I will tell you that because it's something. I have a very good friend. The funny thing about it is I have a very good friend who knew me from a long time, just like you. Mm. And he told me, Konris, I don't care how much you tell me so. Even if God come down and tell me what you're telling me, I still ain't gonna believe you. Because that is just what the sentiment is out there.
Right.
But, you know, I have to deal with it. What else can I do? You know?
Just deal with it. Live your life.
Yeah.
Live life. Guys, I saw some of you trying to call in. I apologize for missing the call. I allowed the interviewee to finish his answer. But again, feel free to call in, and we'll take it as soon as we see the phone lines light up. Jade, let me ask you a question. What do you think I've been treated?
Well, thankfully, I cannot make that decision. Only the
people in the lovely people of constituency number 3.
What question? I didn't hear.
Who she think gonna win constituency number 3? But we have a call.
I don't know who she thinks gonna win, but she won't say.
Oh, you read minds.
Yes. As a politician, you learn to, even if somebody tell you blue, you know what they're saying.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But we have a call on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live on Island T.
Good morning, host. Good morning, Konris. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. Good morning to you.
I've been listening to you for a short moment, not as long as I would like to, but what I did not hear you mention is your readiness to join forces, to put legislation in place to protect the people from the politician. The politician is employed by the people.
Right.
They get 5 years, one time, without any probation. What I would like to see is a legislation passed so the people can pull back that politician as a servant within a parameter before 5 years. We also need protection for the ministers, the servant of the people. We need protection for them from the Prime Minister, who have so much power. Until you have these protection across the board, like employer, employee, and probation effect, we're not going to go anywhere. Because after 5 years, you're taking away 5 years from a man. 5 years is a long time. If a judge sentences you for 5 years in jail, under the condition of which you think you're going in the right direction, and he asks you to turn, and you wind up your glass and you pass him, like you never see him before, and you skin up your nose because you know you have 5 years, and you're ready to prowl on him for another 5 years after that is finished. We need help for each other. We need protection to know that we have that safety pin that we could pull that pin on you and bring you back to reality, because sometimes politicians have a tendency to lose their way. And you say, you have not collected a dime, a salary. I joined the club, I don't believe you. Have a good day.
Not a salary, I said, because I obviously received a salary in Parliament, which I gave back to the community. But yes, no matter what anyone says, I stick with that. I've never, ever received any personal, and I made it my point. I will go further to say this, Azem. When I had my interview with Dr. Denzel Douglas before I became a candidate, I told him something very specific. I don't mind saying this publicly. I told him, in this process of selecting a candidate, you must know, I do not require anything from you to become a candidate. Right. Secondly, I do not require anything from you to not become the candidate. So when you're making your decision, bear that in mind, right? And so I challenged the caller to prove me wrong otherwise. But he made a very important point, though, which is to deal with what is called recall. And I think he would have missed the first part when we talked about having to deal with constitutional reform to ensure that if you have a prime minister in a situation like this where there are no checks and balances within his own cabinet, we need to examine our constitution as to how we will deal with those particular situations. And this will be lumped into that in terms of having a discussion as to whether there is need for a recall mechanism in our type of parliamentary system. Right. And so that is certainly on the table.
Yeah, Konris, we actually have someone else trying to join the conversation. Good morning, caller. You're live on Island T. What's up?
Yeah, good morning, Konris. Good morning.
Good morning.
And to the other two young people here. You said something a while ago that catch my attention. You said that young people who have a desire to build a home, you all will help them with material. I guess they will have to have the land. They must have the land before they can build. But if they do get the land, would you be able to help them to get the land? If not, and they have the land on their own, would you police the handing over this material to make sure that the material don't go to other places other than what it is intended for? That's my question.
Right. Absolutely. Let me explain that. So, for instance, in when you go to build, there are different phases that you must pass by the building board. Ideally, every phase of construction, you're supposed to be checked off before you continue. And so in this program, you will establish these phases. So there will be a phase called, for instance, foundation. Right. So you will only be given the material for the foundation. If that is not completed in the way that it needs to be completed,
you can't move forward.
You can't move forward. Right. So that is already in our system, but a program like this will definitely be policed in that way. And of course, yes, obviously, the procurement of land will have to be the first stage of ensuring that we empower the people with land. Let me go a little further because there are two important issues I didn't bring up. We close at 10, right? So I need to say it very quickly. With respect to the same housing revolution, one of the things we want to get our country to is to become a green energy state. And so what we want to look at is how it is we can contribute to our state being the first green energy state in the region. That will include, for instance, providing concessions on green energy equipment, solar panels, and so on, that you can generate electricity and eventually effectively sell it back to the government. Because you may have solar energy that you produce in a day more than you can use. You put it back in the grid, you either get a credit or you get a reversal on your meter. Right, so that is something that I'm very passionate about as well, because I want to see St. Kitts become the first independent, green energy independent state. We can do it. We have the resources to do it. We're small enough to achieve it and become an example of the region and the world. And I'm surprised. I thought you were going to ask me as a big entertainer about entertainment, unless you have lost all hope.
I don't think we've lost all, but it's dwindling.
But you must be rest assured that is going to be a critical component of not only for my constituency, but for the country as a whole, because that is a emerging market that we must take advantage of. Again, the same thing like with sports. We have immense talent, right, to accomplish and achieve anything we want with respect to the entertainment industry. But we do not have a framework and resources that allows that to be viable. ASEM, for instance, shouldn't having to pay huge duties and taxes on equipment. Musicians should not be having to do that. That is bona fide, registered entertainers and practitioners. We must understand and take entertainment seriously, just as we take tourism seriously, just as we take agriculture and housing seriously. Our government, the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party administration in government, will say, we are going to invest in the entertainment industry. We are going to make it another arm of how we are going to move our country forward. So I just wanted to drop that in before our time ran out.
Understood, man, understood. And unfortunately, the time has come to an end. Konris, it's always a pleasure when we link up. The sippers just have a good time when you come and join us here on Island Tea. And, I know at this particular time you must have a lot going on.
Absolutely.
So we're grateful for taking the time and coming to hang out with us this morning, man.
No problem. It was my pleasure to be here, and I just want to leave by by taking the opportunity to encourage those in constituency number 3 to vote for Konris Maynard by the hand, and in every other constituency where there's a Labour candidate, you vote for the hand. This is a serious election. We are a young, emerging group of politicians who I think have the country's interests at heart. And we offer, as you said, something fresh. It's a new day. We are committing to a better way with the Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. So you and Jade, I want you to give strong consideration for that, but I'm not going to put you on the spot on the radio.
No, man, there's only one spot I'd be on here when I go in the booth. So we ain't got worry.
But it was my pleasure.
Yeah, man, for
Anytime.
sure.
And we look forward to having you back sometime
Anytime.
later.
Yeah, man, good luck with your campaign.
We'll be watching.
Yes?
We'll be watching.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Excellent.
Well, Jade, that is it for us here on Island Tea today.